Tonight's rowdy Democratic Party debate in Charleston, South Carolina, U.S. Senator Bernie Sanders was the man with a big target on his back. Coming on the heels of his big win in Nevada last weekend, the other candidates know they must slow down Senator Sanders' momentum. His opponents painted him as a puppet of Vladimir Putin, who also loved the Castro revolution in Cuba. Two billionaires, Mike Bloomberg and Tom, ganged up to attack Bernie Sanders by accusing the Vermont senator of benefiting from alleged Russian interference in the 2020 U.S. election. Let's start with Tom Steyer.
The question you have to ask is, where's the commander-in-chief? And let me say this.
We don't have one.
This isn't news. What Vice President Biden said is true. He did stand next to Vladimir Putin. There was a hostile foreign attack on our election last time, and the president sided with the hostile foreign power. That's why I started need to impeach. That's what we have to do. We have to oppose a president who sides with a hostile foreign power that commits cyber warfare against the United States of America. That's where we are. Where are all these patriotic Republicans who wave the flag, but when we're actually under attack, they side with our enemies? It's outrageous. That's why he should have been impeached. They covered it up, and I was years before these people. There's something wrong here. We're under attack, and they're not doing a darn thing about it.
Well, former New York Mayor Mike Bloomberg also attacked Senator Sanders last night. He accused Senator Sanders of being Vladimir Putin's favorite candidate to win the 2020 Democratic nomination.
I think that Donald Trump thinks it would be better if he's president. I do not think so. Vladimir Putin thinks that Donald Trump should be president of the United States, and that's why Russia is helping you get elected, so you'll lose to him.
Well, the American Israel Public Affairs Committee will convene their pro-Zionist conference next week in Israeli-occupied territory, Washington, D.C. Jewish billionaire Mike Bloomberg will speak to the assembled Zionists, many of whom have dual citizenship in America and Israel. Senator Sanders, however, declared he will not attend the Zionist Love Fest. The radical Vermont senator's comments at Tuesday's debate has stunned the Zionist world when he tossed a hand grenade into the Democratic Party's lap by reiterating his support for the Palestinian people in their struggle to escape Israeli persecution and oppression. The far-left Democratic candidate vowed to support Palestinian human rights, and he said he's open to relocating the U.S. Embassy in Israel back to Tel Aviv.
He recently called a very prominent, well-known American Israel lobby a platform for, quote, bigotry. What would you say to American Jews who might be concerned you're not, from their perspective, supportive enough of Israel? And specifically, sir, would you move the U.S. Embassy back to Tel Aviv?
Let me just, the answer is it's something that we would take into consideration.
Which would,
but here, excuse me, but here is the point. I am very proud of being Jewish. I actually lived in Israel for some months. But what I happen to believe is that right now, sadly, tragically, in Israel, through Bibi Netanyahu, you have a reactionary racist who is now running that country. And I happen to believe that what our foreign policy in the Mideast should be about is absolutely protecting the independence and security of Israel. But you cannot ignore the suffering of the Palestinian people. We have got to have a policy that reaches out to the Palestinians and the Americans. And in answer to your question, that will come within the context of bringing nations together in the Mideast.
Well, Israel's foreign minister Israel Katz slammed Senator Sanders for saying he would move the embassy back to Tel Aviv. Mr. Katz called Senator Sanders' proposal shocking and against the core of Jewish belief, Jewish history, and Israel's security. Senator Sanders was also attacked by 347 Jewish rabbis. The rabbis signed a letter condemning the Vermont senator for making what they said were outrageous comments about Israel and refusing to attend AIPAC next week. Oh, Bernie Sanders is the most pro-Palestinian candidate in the race in 2020. And I'm thinking about endorsing Senator Sanders in his quest to win the 2020 Democratic presidential nomination. I may campaign for him to win the Florida Democratic primary. His victory would set up an interesting contest this fall. We would have a pro-Palestinian Jewish Democrat running against a pro-Zionist Republican. If Bernie Sanders wins in November, True News will apply for White House press credentials in the Sanders administration. We could get permanent press credentials for Edward Zoll, and he would be in the White House press room every day. Edward Zoll is here. Edward, what do you think? Should I endorse Bernie Sanders to win the Democratic presidential nomination?
Based on the resume you just laid out, he might be the best candidate for the far left right wing base.
But, you know, that would be an interesting alliance that he could put together. So, you know, we could, once again, have White House press credentials, attend events with the White House. You know, I think Bernie Sanders would treat us with respect and dignity. We've been fair. And, I think in a Bernie Sanders administration, you could have permanent press credentials, and you could be sitting right there in the press room with CNN, the Washington Post, the NBC, and you act like a gentleman and a professional, and you would treat President Sanders with respect.
We were there on the night that the first, allegedly, according to some in the media, the first allegedly Jewish president won the White House. Why wouldn't we be there when the second takes office?
Well, we'll just see where this election goes. It's going to be an interesting year. President Trump is going to be holding a press, actually not a press conference. It's a briefing along with some CDC officials. It's coming up in just a few minutes. We're going to go live to the White House unless the ADL manages to cut our feed from the White House press room. That's possible. They might be able to do that. Or maybe some of the religious evangelical Zionists, they might call the White House.
They're for censorship
right
now.
Yeah, they support Nazi-like censorship. We're just trying to do a good job to get information out to not only the American people, but there are people all over the world watching True News, and they rely on us. They know that we're fair and we're professional and we're thorough. So we're gonna have the president's comments coming up here in a few minutes. And the president seems to be, according to the press reports earlier today, very upset with what he said is, allegedly what he has said is fake news about the coronavirus. Now, it appears if these reports are correct, the President Trump is concerned that there's too much talk in America about coronavirus, and it's going to hurt the economy, and that's not going to be good for him in the election campaign. So we're going to wait here for a few minutes. We have plenty of information to bring to you about the president's upcoming remarks. Hey, last night, Edward, at the end of the debate, the Democratic Party debate, now, I didn't see this. You saw it. Matt saw it. It was CBS, right? CBS
yes,
television?
CBS News.
So when the debate ended, CBS had a commercial, and the commercial was for the movie The Hunt, which is about hunting down and shooting conservative Christian Americans. Now, we helped stop that movie last year, and we were slammed, we were vilified, we were lied about, because we said this movie is made in Hollywood, predominantly a lot of Jewish people involved in this movie, and it's about shooting conservative Americans, hunting them like animals. And They went after us and just ripped us up. But now the movie is back, and they showed it. They showed the trailer for it at the very end of the debate.
No, this is absolutely correct, Rick. And when I first saw this, I was just in awe at the either complete error made by CBS News to play a trailer which depicts politically motivated violence. That's essentially what the hunt is. They are hunting conservatives, they're hunting Americans for their political and religious beliefs. Now, they chose to put this in the debate to pick the candidate to run for president for the Democratic Party. What I did is, Rick, in the online version, you can't find this. But anybody sitting on their couch who was watching this via their TV, this was what it was. Right before you basically see in the closing remarks, you were seeing this trailer for the hunt.
Was this a not so subliminal message to the American people? This is what's coming at the end of the presidential election year. If it doesn't go our way, we're going to hunt down and shoot conservative American citizens.
Well, I'd say the Democrats would definitely say this was intentional if it was played during the Republican debates. If there's going to be debates, for example, let's say if there was a commercial.
You mean like the NRA produces a movie about going to Hollywood and shooting liberals?
Yes, for their beliefs, both spiritual and political.
Can you imagine a trailer at the end of the Republican debates, and not any Republican debates this year, but if there were, can you imagine a trailer at the end of the debates, and it shows NRA members stalking left-wingers in Hollywood and shooting them like possums?
They would say that this is the Republican Party promoting terrorism. Because again, terrorism is an act of violence against people to try to influence politics.
Well, do we have this video that was played last night?
We found a watch party by a local TV station. It's actually CBS. Actually, the outlet itself is out of Atlanta, CBS 6, I believe. The outlet itself, they're sitting there talking as the commercials are playing, and you can actually see the commercial playing on the TV. And we have it zoomed in. So pay attention to the left part of the screen. Here is what played during last night's debate.
But if there was one candidate that stood out, not only based on historical performance, but also based on what happened tonight on that debate stage, I would have to inch it out to Steyer. Mm-hmm. He said more than he said before. He showed himself to increase his political platform more than just the environment, which he's been on the environment so hard, I think it alienated a lot of voters, because when you ask the average voter, the environment is not number one. It's always top 10. But the environment is typically never number one on their political agenda. I think he's finally getting that message. I do think Bernie Sanders at multiple times has seemed to be angry.
Yeah.
All right, so that's what Americans saw in their living rooms last night when the debate ended. If they were watching CBS, and they saw a trailer promoting this movie, The Hunt, which is about left-wingers hunting down and shooting conservative Americans like they're rodents. Now, we have the actual trailer from The Hunt. Watch this.
Did you see that article? Every year, these liberal elites kidnap a bunch of normal folks like us and hunt us for sport.
The last I heard, free speech still exists.
Don't First Amendment me.
It wasn't real.
Everybody get out of here!
We were joking. You actually believed we were hunting human beings for sport. But you are.
These are not real people. They're actors.
I'm playing an Arab refugee, but I identify as white. I think that's problematic too, in some way.
You wanted it to be real, so you decided it was.
What kind of sick people would even think of something like that?
White people. We're the worst.
How demented, sick, and weird do you have to be to spend millions of dollars in several years producing a movie about hunting human beings?
I'd love to ask the producers of this, Blumhouse Productions. Rick, they also came up with the Purge series. And their marketing director actually worked at the White House for a while under Jared Kushner. I'd love to ask them about where they're at mentally to come up with that filth.
Well, you know, this is the propaganda that they used against me, where they put out there these stories, which are still circulating today. Rick Wiles says there's going to be Jewish hit squads hunting down Christians this fall. Well, we just showed you the trailer made by a Jewish movie producer about killing Christians. All right, so who's lying? You just saw the trailer. They spent millions of dollars to produce this trailer to come out this year. Now, is it a joke? Are they trolling us? Well, I think you got to be really weird, sick, and demented to make a movie like this, or maybe you really do plan for it to happen. And that's my job, is to get this warning out to the American people. All right, let's move on. We got some coronavirus news to do here. We're waiting on President Trump to appear in the White House, and we will have this live news conference from the White House. Again, unless the ADL is able to jump in and sever the line between the White House and True News' studio, they may be trying to prevent us from reporting the news. You know, they're news Nazis, and they're very upset that we're still operating. They've given it their best shot, and they can't shut me down. In fact, we just keep getting bigger, and the financial support keeps coming in. They cut off PayPal, and more money came in. They cut off YouTube, and our audience went up. They don't know what to do. They're just beside themselves. And now I'm thinking about endorsing Bernie Sanders and going out and helping him win the Democratic nomination, and then applying for press credentials in the Bernie Sanders administration, because I think he's a fair guy, and I think he'd give press credentials to True News. So anyhow, let's talk about coronavirus. This is for our control room, number 9. President Trump accuses cable TV of making coronavirus look as bad as possible. He's concerned that this is hurting his election campaign. I want to move on to number 11. Mike Bloomberg slams Trump coronavirus response in a new ad highlighting 9/11 aftermath. So, Edward, Mike Bloomberg is the first candidate to jump out and say, I'm the coronavirus candidate.
Yes, and it really, honestly, it's a pretty big failure on President Trump to not claim this position. It was very easy for him to be the coronavirus czar, the coronavirus candidate for 2020, because all he'd have to say is, I'm for closing the borders. Isn't this about security? It's how we keep our population safe. Well, all we're asking for here is to stop the flights coming from an epicenter of an epidemic.
And so Mike Bloomberg has made a campaign ad saying that he's criticizing President Trump for not doing enough. And if this other story is correct, and we're going to find out here in just a few minutes what President Trump's attitude is right now about coronavirus. But if it turns out Mike Bloomberg is right, that President Trump is ignoring it, it's going to really hurt him later in the year. Let's watch this Bloomberg political ad that he's now running.
The deadly coronavirus officially hitting the U.S.
The markets are plunging for a second straight day.
Health experts warn the U.S. is underprepared. Managing a crisis is what Mike Bloomberg does. In the aftermath of 9/11, he steadied and rebuilt America's largest city, oversaw emergency response to natural disasters, upgraded hospital preparedness to manage health crises, and he's funding cutting-edge research to contain epidemics. Tested, ready.
I'm Mike Bloomberg, and I approve this message.
I was scanning Korean news websites today, and I saw a shocking article from Yonhap News. Korean air flight attendant infected with coronavirus. And it says that a crew member working for Korean Airlines has been diagnosed with coronavirus. The cabin crew member was found to be infected with COVID-19 after serving on a South Korea to Los Angeles route on the days of January 19 and 20. The same person also flew from South Korea to Tel Aviv, Israel.
That's right.
The flight attendant may have contracted the virus from a group of South Korean churchgoers who were on a pilgrimage to Israel. So, once again, we have South Korean church associated with the outbreak in South Korea. That church group, which would have been Zionists, then took it to Israel. And that's why Israel now has an outbreak. And now, here in the U.S., they have to be thinking about how many passengers were on that flight to LAX, and where are they? Where did they go? Who did they have contact with? And how many other flights was this flight attendant on? We have a report. This is number 13. This is from CBS Los Angeles. Korean air flight attendant working LAX flights diagnosed with coronavirus. At least 30 church group members also diagnosed. Whoa, 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 whoa. Look at that. 30 members of the church on that flight diagnosed.
That was a super spreader flight.
Wow. And then we have a video news report. It was earlier today out of Los Angeles. This is, let's see, is it CBS or
Los Angeles? Yes.
Yeah.
CBS Los Angeles.
The first one, yes. So this is no. The first one is number 12. Excuse me. ABC Television, Channel 7. Let's watch this. This is a report that came out this afternoon in Los Angeles.
But we start with that flight attendant they just mentioned. South Korean media says the employee worked on a flight from Incheon to LA and may have spent time in LA before boarding a return flight. LA County health officials say they are waiting on confirmation from the CDC, but at this point there are no new cases of coronavirus in LA County. Meanwhile, someone from Riverside County aboard a quarantined cruise ship in Japan has also come down with the virus and is being treated in Northern California. And the Newport Beach City Council has voted to support Costa Mesa in its legal fight to keep the Fairview Development Center in Costa Mesa from being turned into a quarantine center. Over the weekend, Naval Base Ventura County Point Mugu was announced as another possible quarantine site. A press conference on the possible use of this base is set for this afternoon in Camarillo.
And that's an issue, is finding quarantine locations today that exist still.
Wow. Exactly.
And we have a second report from Los Angeles today. This is the CBS local affiliate I was trying to think of. So this is Channel 2, CBS LA control room. This is number 14. Let's watch this report also.
The latest development, a Korean flight attendant who flew out of LAX has been diagnosed with the coronavirus. She was diagnosed in South Korea. Several South Korean media outlets say she had just worked on flights between LAX and Seoul, South Korea on February 19th and 20th. She also serviced a flight from Tel Aviv back on February 15th. South Korean authorities report a church group was on that flight and that at least 30 members have also been diagnosed with the virus. Now, meanwhile, the Centers for Disease Control is urging Americans to prepare for a spike in cases here.
We are asking the American public to work with us to prepare in the expectation that this could be bad.
There are now more than 50 confirmed cases of the novel coronavirus in the U.S. The CDC says it is inevitable it will spread. Worldwide, the outbreak has infected more than 80,000 people. About 3,000 have died. The Trump administration responded by sending Congress an emergency funding request for $2.5 billion to buy protective gear and work on treatments and vaccines. Lawmakers on both sides of the aisle are questioning whether that will be enough. Widespread worry fueled a massive drop-off on Wall Street. Stocks logged their worst 2 days in 2 years. At the same time, more flights have been canceled between LAX and Asia, and the president of the World Trade Center in LA says that's going to hurt.
With all the flight cancellation going directly to and from China, this is going to have a huge impact not only on trade, but also the tourism industry as well.
In fact, the LA Tourism and Convention Board expects to see a drop of 325,000 Chinese visitors, which translates to a $921 million hit to the local economy. And in another local development, USC has now canceled or brought back all of its exchange students from South Korea as well as parts of Italy that have been impacted.
All right, Everett, in that video, there was a brief comment by CDC official.
Psalm 83. Keep not thou silence, O God. Hold not thy peace, and be not still, O God. For lo, thine enemies make a tumult, and they that hate thee have lifted up the head. They have taken crafty counsel against thy people, and consulted against thy hidden ones. They have said, Come, and let us cut them off from being a nation, that the name of Israel may be no more in remembrance. For they have consulted together with one consent. They are confederate against thee. The tabernacles of Edom, and the Ishmaelites of Moab, and the Hagarenes, Gebal, and Ammon, and Amalek, the Philistines with the inhabitants of Tyre. Assur also is joined with them. They have helped the children of Lot, Selah. Do unto them as unto the Midianites, as to Sisera, as to Jabin at the brook of Kison, which perished at Endor. They became as dung for the earth. Make their nobles like Oreb, and like Zeb, yea, all their princes as Zebah, and as Zalmunna, who said, Let us take to ourselves the houses of God in possession. O my God, make them like a wheel, as the stubble before the wind, as the fire burneth a wood, and as the flame setteth the mountains on fire. So persecute them with thy tempest, and make them afraid with thy storm. Fill their faces with shame, that they may seek thy name, O Lord. Let them be confounded and troubled forever, yea, let them be put to shame and perish, that men may know that thou, whose name alone is Jehovah, art the Most High over all the earth. Psalm 84. How amiable are thy tabernacles, O Lord of hosts! My soul longeth, yea, even fainteth for the courts of the Lord. My heart and my flesh crieth out for the living God. Yea, the sparrow hath found an house, and the swallow a nest for herself, where she may lay her young, even thine altars, O Lord of hosts, my King and my God. Blessed are they that dwell in thy house, they will be still praising thee, Selah. Blessed is the man whose strength is in thee, in whose heart are the ways of them, who passing through the valley of Baca make it a well. The rain also filleth the pools. They go from strength to strength, every one of them. In Zion appeareth before God. O Lord God of hosts, hear my prayer. Give ear, O God of Jacob, Selah. Behold, O God our shield, and look upon the face of thine anointed. For a day in thy courts is better than 1,000. I had rather be a doorkeeper in the house of my God, than to dwell in the tents of wickedness. For the Lord God is a sun and shield. The Lord will give grace and glory. No good thing will he withhold from them that walk uprightly. O Lord of hosts, blessed is the man that trusteth in thee. Psalm 85. Lord, thou hast been favorable unto thy land. Thou hast brought back the captivity of Jacob. Thou hast forgiven the iniquity of thy people. Thou hast covered all their sin, Selah. Thou hast taken away all thy wrath. Thou hast turned thyself from the fierceness of thine anger. Turn us, O God of our salvation, and cause thine anger toward us to cease. Wilt thou be angry with us forever? Wilt thou draw out thine anger to all generations? Wilt thou not revive us again, that thy people may rejoice in thee? Show us thy mercy, O Lord, and grant us thy salvation. I will hear what God the Lord will speak, for he will speak peace unto his people and to his saints, but let them not turn again to folly. Surely his salvation is nigh them that fear him, that glory may dwell in our land. Mercy and truth are met together. Righteousness and peace have kissed each other. Truth shall spring out of the earth, and righteousness shall look down from heaven. Yea, the Lord shall give that which is good, and our land shall yield her increase. Righteousness shall go before him, and shall set us in the way of his steps. Psalm 86. Bow down thine ear, O Lord, hear me, for I am poor and needy. Preserve my soul, for I am holy. O thou my God, save thy servant that trusteth in thee. Be merciful unto me, O Lord, for I cry unto thee daily. Rejoice the soul of thy servant, for unto thee, O Lord, do I lift up my soul. For thou, Lord, art good, and ready to forgive, and plenteous in mercy unto all them that call upon thee. Give ear, O Lord, unto my prayer, and attend to the voice of my supplications. In the day of my trouble I will call upon thee, for thou wilt answer me. Among the gods there is none like unto thee. O Lord, neither are there any works like unto thy works. All nations whom thou hast made shall come and worship before thee, O Lord, and shall glorify thy name. For thou art great, and doest wondrous things. Thou art God alone. Teach me thy way, O Lord. I will walk in thy truth. Unite my heart to fear thy name. I will praise thee, O Lord my God, with all my heart, and I will glorify thy name for evermore. For great is thy mercy toward me, and thou hast delivered my soul from the lowest hell. O God, the proud are risen against me, and the assemblies of violent men have sought after my soul, and have not set thee before them. But thou, O Lord, art a God full of compassion, and gracious, long-suffering, and plenteous in mercy and truth. O turn unto me, and have mercy upon me. Give thy strength unto thy servant, and save the son of thine handmaid. Show me a token for good, that they which hate me may see it, and be ashamed, because thou, Lord, hast helped me, and comforted me. Psalm 87. His foundation is in the holy mountains. The Lord loveth the gates of Zion more than all the dwellings of Jacob. Glorious things are spoken of thee, O city of God, Selah. I will make mention of Rahab and Babylon to them that know me. Behold, Philistia and Tyre with Ethiopia, this man was born there. And of Zion it shall be said, this and that man was born in her, and the highest himself shall establish her. The Lord shall count when he rideth up the people, that this man was born there, Selah. As well the singers as the players on instruments shall be there. All my springs are in thee. Psalm 88. O Lord God of my salvation, I have cried day and night before thee. Let my prayer come before thee. Incline thine ear unto my cry. For my soul is full of troubles, and my life draweth nigh unto the grave. I am counted with them that go down into the pit. I am as a man that hath no strength. Free among the dead, like the slain that lie in the grave, whom thou rememberest no more, and they are cut off from thy hand. Thou hast laid me in the lowest pit, in darkness in the deeps. Thy wrath lieth hard upon me, and thou hast afflicted me with all thy waves, Selah. Thou hast put away mine acquaintance far from me. Thou hast made me an abomination unto them. I am shut up, and I cannot come forth. Mine eye mourneth by reason of affliction. Lord, I have called daily upon thee. I have stretched out my hands unto thee. Wilt thou show wonders to the dead? Shall the dead arise and praise thee, Selah? Shall thy loving kindness be declared in the grave, or thy faithfulness in destruction? Shall thy wonders be known in the dark, and thy righteousness in the land of forgetfulness? But unto thee have I cried, O Lord, and in the morning shall my prayer prevent thee. Lord, why castest thou off my soul? Why hidest thou thy face from me? I am afflicted and ready to die from my youth up. While I suffer thy terrors, I am distracted. Thy fierce wrath goeth over me. Thy terrors have cut me off. They came round about me daily like water. They compassed me about together. Lover and friend hast thou put far from me, and mine acquaintance into darkness. Psalm 89. I will sing of the mercies of the Lord forever. With my mouth will I make known thy faithfulness to all generations. For I have said, mercy shall be built up forever. Thy faithfulness shalt thou establish in the very heavens. I have made a covenant with my chosen. I have sworn unto David my servant. Thy seed will I establish forever, and build up thy throne to all generations, Selah. And the heavens shall praise thy wonders, O Lord, thy faithfulness also in the congregation of the saints. For who in the heaven can be compared unto the Lord? Who among the sons of the mighty can be likened unto the Lord? God is greatly to be feared in the assembly of the saints, and to be had in reverence of all them that are about him. O Lord God of hosts, who is a strong Lord like unto thee, or to thy faithfulness round about thee? Thou rulest the raging of the sea, when the waves thereof arise, thou stillest them. Thou hast broken Rahab in pieces, as one that is slain. Thou hast scattered thine enemies with thy strong arm. The heavens are thine, the earth also is thine. As for the world and the fullness thereof, thou hast founded them. The north and the south, thou hast created them. Tabor and Hermon shall rejoice in thy name. Thou hast a mighty arm, strong is thy hand, and high is thy right hand. Justice and judgment are the habitation of thy throne. Mercy and truth shall go before thy face. Blessed is the people that know the joyful sound. They shall walk, O Lord, in the light of thy countenance. In thy name shall they rejoice all the day, and in thy righteousness shall they be exalted. For thou art the glory of their strength, and in thy favor our horn shall be exalted. For the Lord is our defense, and the Holy One of Israel is our King. Then thou spakest in vision to thy Holy One, and saidst, I have laid help upon one that is mighty. I have exalted one chosen out of the people. I have found David my servant, with my holy oil have I anointed him, with whom my hand shall be established, mine arm also shall strengthen him. The enemy shall not exact upon him, nor the son of wickedness afflict him. And I will beat down his foes before his face, and plague them that hate him. But my faithfulness and my mercy shall be with him, and in my name shall his horn be exalted. I will set his hand also in the sea, and his right hand in the rivers. He shall cry unto me, Thou art my Father, my God, and the rock of my salvation. Also I will make him my firstborn, higher than the kings of the earth. My mercy will I keep for him forevermore, and my covenant shall stand fast with him. His seed also will I make to endure forever, and his throne as the days of heaven. If his children forsake my law, and walk not in my judgments, if they break my statutes, and keep not my commandments, then will I visit their transgression with the rod, and their iniquity with stripes. Nevertheless, my loving kindness will I not utterly take from him, nor suffer my faithfulness to fail. My covenant will I not break, nor alter the thing that is gone out of my lips. Once have I sworn by my holiness that I will not lie unto David. His seed shall endure forever, and his throne as the sun before me. It shall be established forever as the moon, and as a faithful witness in heaven, Selah. But thou hast cast off and abhorred. Thou hast been wroth with thine anointed. Thou hast made void the covenant of thy servant. Thou hast profaned his crown by casting it to the ground. Thou hast broken down all his hedges. Thou hast brought his strongholds to ruin. All that pass by the way spoil him. He is a reproach to his neighbors. Thou hast set up the right hand of his adversaries. Thou hast made all his enemies to rejoice. Thou hast also turned the edge of his sword, and hast not made him to stand in the battle. Thou hast made his glory to cease, and cast his throne down to the ground. The days of his youth hast thou shortened. Thou hast covered him with shame, Selah. How long, Lord? Wilt thou hide thyself forever? Shall thy wrath burn like fire? Remember how short my time is. Wherefore hast thou made all men in vain? What man is he that liveth, and shall not see death? Shall he deliver his soul from the hand of the grave, Selah? Lord, where are thy former loving kindnesses, which thou swearest unto David in thy truth? Remember, Lord, the reproach of thy servants, how I do bear in my bosom the reproach of all the mighty people, wherewith thine enemies have reproached, O Lord, wherewith they have reproached the footsteps of thine anointed. Blessed be the Lord forevermore. Amen and amen. Psalm 90. Lord, thou hast been our dwelling place in all generations, before the mountains were brought forth, or ever thou hadst formed the earth and the world. Even from everlasting to everlasting thou art God. Thou turnest man to destruction, and sayest, Return, ye children of men. For 1,000 years in thy sight are but as yesterday when it is past, and as a watch in the night. Thou carriest them away as with a flood. They are as a sleep. In the morning they are like grass which groweth up. In the morning it flourisheth and groweth up. In the evening it is cut down and withereth. For we are consumed by thine anger, and by thy wrath are we troubled. Thou hast set our iniquities before thee, our secret sins in the light of thy countenance. For all our days are passed away in thy wrath. We spend our years as a tale that is told. The days of our years are 80 years and 10, and if by reason of strength they be 80 years, yet is their strength labor and sorrow, for it is soon cut off, and we fly away. Who knoweth the power of thine anger? Even according to thy fear, so is thy wrath. So teach us to number our days, that we may apply our hearts unto wisdom. Return, O Lord, how long? And let it repent thee concerning thy servants. O satisfy us early with thy mercy, that we may rejoice and be glad all our days. Make us glad according to the days wherein thou hast afflicted us, and the years wherein we have seen evil. Let thy work appear unto thy servants, and thy glory unto their children. And let the beauty of the Lord our God be upon us, and establish thou the work of our hands upon us, yea, the work of our hands, establish thou it.
Tooth surface. Pronamel is formulated to help deliver minerals to the tooth surface to help reharden and strengthen your enamel.
Psalm 91. He that dwelleth in the secret place of the Most High shall abide under the shadow of the Almighty. I will say of the Lord, He is my refuge and my fortress, my God, in Him will I trust. Surely He shall deliver thee from the snare of the fowler, and from the noisome pestilence. He shall cover thee with His feathers, and under His wings shalt thou trust. His truth shall be thy shield and buckler. Thou shalt not be afraid for the terror by night, nor for the arrow that flieth by day, nor for the pestilence that walketh in darkness, nor for the destruction that wasteth at noonday. 1,000 shall fall at thy side, and 10,000 at thy right hand, but it shall not come nigh thee. Only with thine eyes shalt thou behold and see the reward of the wicked, because thou hast made the Lord, which is my refuge, even the Most High, thy habitation. There shall no evil befall thee, neither shall any plague come nigh thy dwelling. For he shall give his angels charge over thee, to keep thee in all thy ways. They shall bear thee up in their hands, lest thou dash thy foot against a stone. Thou shalt tread upon a lion and adder. The young lion and the dragon shalt thou trample under feet. Because he hath set his love upon me, therefore will I deliver him. I will set him on high, because he hath known my name. He shall call upon me, and I will answer him. I will be with him in trouble. I will deliver him and honor him. With long life will I satisfy him, and show him my salvation. Psalm 92. It is a good thing to give thanks unto the Lord, and to sing praises unto thy name, O Most High, to show forth thy loving kindness in the morning, and thy faithfulness every night, upon an instrument of 10 strings, and upon the psaltery, upon the harp with a solemn sound. For thou, Lord, hast made me glad through thy work. I will triumph in the works of thy hands. O Lord, how great are thy works, and thy thoughts are very deep. A brutish man knoweth not, neither doth a fool understand this. When the wicked spring as the grass, and when all the workers of iniquity do flourish, it is that they shall be destroyed forever. But thou, Lord, art most high forevermore. For lo, thine enemies, O Lord, for lo, thine enemies shall perish. All the workers of iniquity shall be scattered. But my horn shalt thou exalt like the horn of an unicorn. I shall be anointed with fresh oil. Mine eye also shall see my desire of mine enemies, and mine ears shall hear my desire of the wicked that rise up against me. The righteous shall flourish like the palm tree. He shall grow like a cedar in Lebanon. Those that be planted in the house of the Lord shall flourish in the courts of our God. They shall still bring forth fruit in old age. They shall be fat and flourishing, to show that the Lord is upright. He is my rock, and there is no unrighteousness in him. Psalm 93. The Lord reigneth. He is clothed with majesty. The Lord is clothed with strength, wherewith he hath girded himself. The world also is established, that it cannot be moved. Thy throne is established of old. Thou art from everlasting. The floods have lifted up, O Lord. The floods have lifted up their voice. The floods lift up their waves. The Lord on high is mightier than the noise of many waters, yea, than the mighty waves of the sea. Thy testimonies are very sure. Holiness becometh thine house, O Lord, forever. Psalm 94. O Lord God, to whom vengeance belongeth, O God, to whom vengeance belongeth, show thyself. Lift up thyself, thou judge of the earth, render a reward to the proud. Lord, how long shall the wicked triumph? How long shall they utter and speak hard things, and all the workers of iniquity boast themselves? They break in pieces thy people, O Lord, and afflict thine heritage. They slay the widow and the stranger, and murder the fatherless. Yet they say, the Lord shall not see, neither shall the God of Jacob regard it. Understand, ye brutish among the people, and ye fools, when will ye be wise? He that planted the ear, shall he not hear? He that formed the eye, shall he not see? He that chastiseth the heathen, shall not he correct? He that teacheth man knowledge, shall not he know? The Lord knoweth the thoughts of man, that they are vanity. Blessed is the man whom thou chastenest, O Lord, and teachest him out of thy law, that thou mayest give him rest from the days of adversity, until the pit be digged for the wicked. For the Lord will not cast off his people, neither will he forsake his inheritance. But judgment shall return unto righteousness, and all the upright in heart shall follow it. Who will rise up for me against the evildoers, or who will stand up for me against the workers of iniquity? Unless the Lord had been my help, my soul had almost dwelt in silence. When I said, my foot slippeth, thy mercy, O Lord, held me up. In the multitude of my thoughts within me, thy comforts delight my soul. Shall the throne of iniquity have fellowship with thee, which frameth mischief by a law? They gather themselves together against the soul of the righteous, and condemn the innocent blood. But the Lord is my defense, and my God is the rock of my refuge. And he shall bring upon them their own iniquity, and shall cut them off in their own wickedness. Yea, the Lord our God shall cut them off. Psalm 83. Keep not thou silence, O God. Hold not thy peace, and be not still, O God. For lo, thine enemies make a tumult, and they that hate thee have lifted up the head. They have taken crafty counsel against thy people, and consulted against thy hidden ones. They have said, Come, and let us cut them off from being a nation, that the name of Israel may be no more in remembrance. For they have consulted together with one consent. They are confederate against thee. The tabernacles of Edom, and the Ishmaelites of Moab, and the Hagarenes, Gebal, and
remain in that state of fallen sin. They don't even know what the tree of life is or anything. And then all this is conjecture. That's nowhere in the Bible at all. You know, but all they're trying to do with this is to detour people who are new to the religion, and they don't understand the truth, and they looking towards the comments to see how other people feel about what's being said here, instead of actually listening to the truth and opening up the book and reading it for themselves. The seed God speaks of in Genesis about crushing and then it stops right there. Lies, deception, straight up blasphemy, and conjecture. And so we're going to go through the conjecture that was infiltrated in the Bible. And so the lie. 1 Timothy 3:16. And without doubt, great is the mystery of godliness. God was no mystery to the children of Israel before. Why is he a mystery now? Because it ain't our God. God was manifest in the flesh. God ain't never came in the flesh before. We're going to clear all this mess up. Justified in the spirit. Why would God need justification? Seen the angels when he created them. That's stupid. Preached unto the Gentiles when he said he's going to destroy them. At least the greater majority of them. Believed on in the world and received up into glory. Why did God need to be received up into glory? And he God. And all glory and praise belong to him. See how you worshiping a false God? And it's easy to see if you want to see. Matthew 1:23. Behold, a virgin shall be with child, and shall bring forth a son. That means that Mary's son. That ain't God's son. When is it saying that's God's son? And they shall call his name Emmanuel, which being interpreted is God with us. Well, you can call me master of the damn universe. You can say that's the meaning of my name. At the beginning and the end of the day, it's just the meaning of a name. It ain't a fact. See how they get caught up in foolishness because their minds are foolish. Isaiah 43:10. You are my witnesses, says God, and my servant whom I have chosen, that you may know and believe and understand me, that I am he. Before me there was no God formed, neither shall there be after me. So if there is no God formed, then how can God be with the Virgin Mary? If it ain't gonna be no God formed after, how could Jesus be formed in the womb of Mary and be a God on earth in the flesh, the word becoming flesh? How can that be? And just give us some thought. Was he God when he was coming out of the ass of Mary? Was he God then? Think about that real intensely. You know, Bloody Mary, think about that. Isaiah 44:10. Who has formed a God? They did. These damn Christians. And molded a graven image that is profitable for nothing. I mean, it ain't worth shit. These people who make these false images of God. You know, let's keep going. Why God would never ever come in the flesh? First the contradiction and then much confusion. You're gonna keep going through confusion listening to this garbage and those garbage people. 1 Timothy 3:16, and none of them can explain it because it's all garbage. And somebody somewhere who made this garbage is chuckling hard on it. And without doubt, great is the mystery of godliness. God was manifest in the flesh. Let's keep going. When God said what? No, he wasn't. Romans 8:3, for what the law could not do, in that it was weak through the flesh, meaning that Gentiles cannot obey God, God sent his own son in the likeness of sinful flesh. No God was formed. Wait a minute. Can somebody see the contradiction? It's like Blue's Clues.
It's important to study history so that you don't get complacent about your own time, so that you realize that some of the issues and some of the issues that you're facing have been presenting themselves to people your age earlier on in time with different ways of dealing with them, of course, slightly different choices, but in many cases the same issues. So a lot of what we're facing today is not new. And it helps you be aware of the complexity of society, of culture, of issues of citizenship, of choices, and those are reasons why studying history is important, apart from being fun.
All right, say it plugs it in. Perfect. We'll start.
In their nations. So we covered the breakdown of Genesis chapter 10:5 already in part 2. We started talking about the usage of the word goyim. And so now we're going to look at the sons briefly. Now, one of the things that
I was the one who put these kingdoms together, all for my strength, all for
I was brought up by
my name's Nebuchadnezzar, Nebuchadnezzar, Nebuchadnezzar.
Good, right?
I was the one who put these kingdoms together, all for my strength, all for my pleasure.
Look, my name's Nebuchadnezzar, never felt better. I was the one who put this kingdom together. It was all by my strength, all for my pleasure. Took the Hebrews, those jewels are my treasure. Had a nightmare, couldn't pull myself together. What does this mean? What does this mean? What is this dream? What are the gods telling me? I must be great, my kingdom is legendary. But I feel off guard with this dream from the heavenly. What's gonna happen to me? My prosperity. Somebody help me, somebody tell me, is this a omen? I'm feeling unhealthy.
My name's Nebuchadnezzar, Nebuchadnezzar. I was the one who put these kingdoms together. It was all for my strength, all for my pleasure. My name's Nebuchadnezzar, Nebuchadnezzar, Nebuchadnezzar. I was the one who put these kingdoms together. It was all by my strength, all for my pleasure.
My name's Nebuchadnezzar.
Wise men, charlatans, making me angry. I'll cut you into a dunghill for your family. You think it's a game? We ain't playing Jumanji. I don't wanna hear no false explanation. Tell me the dream and the interpretation. Belshazzar came, he heard I'm impulsive, and he heard the threats of dunghills. That's repulsive. King, oh king, why is the decree urgent? I'll tell you the dream, I won't pervert the version. Give me space to pray, and I'll tell you, alright? The king agreed, and we returned after a night. You saw a statue, and it gave you a fright. You saw you're the head, but the statue declined. Silver, bronze, iron and clay, and at the top it's like you got tossed away. Listen up, cause this is what y'all's trying to say. Your kingdom's on top, but it's going away. To the Persians, the Greeks, the Romans, okay? The king got upset, but he didn't say. Years later made the statue and told us to pray.
The king spake and said, Is not this great Babylon that I have built for the house of the kingdom by the might of my power and for the honor of my majesty? While the word was in the king's mouth, there fell a voice from heaven, saying, O King Nebuchadnezzar, to thee it is spoken, the kingdom is departed from thee.
Ministers are disguised as ministers of justice. And the scripture warns about this deception that's going to come through the Christian religion. This represents the son of perdition because it's really antichrist or imitation. As from the Greek, the word anti can mean instead of or in place of. So when people think of this antichrist, that it's going to be this evil demon, so he has to do it by deceiving and coming on as this good guy, and that's where this disguising, Satan disguising as an angel of light, that's how that comes in. This is instead of Christ, in place of Christ. And not only the image, but even down to the name, where it's only in modern English that we have the name Jesus. It's only in modern English that we have the name Jesus. A couple of hundred years ago, that name never existed. A couple of hundred years ago, that name never existed. And so that people, by accepting this false imagery, they've already accepted the Antichrist.
Yahuwah, Yahushai. Yahuwah, Yahushai. It's crazy what's going on. Man are selling out just for Babylon. Like MC Hammer, I've got the hammer on. Mashing up the idols in Babylon. But everything takes time like a marathon. I've got the sword like King Arthur in Avalon. Anyone can get chopped with the gospel. Zealous like Apostle Paul, the apostle. I've got life cause air's in my nostril. I love truth, they love lies. Now they think that I'm hostile. Yahuwah, Yahushai, the name's official. I'm not a prophet, this ain't my epistle. When the Most High comes, he's bringing the heat like a missile. Every idol you claim will be brittle. Yahuwah, Yahushai. They don't like when we say these names. Yahuwah, Yahushai. They don't like when we say these names. Yahuwah, Yahweh, 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 Shai. They don't like when we say these names.
Rising brethren, this is Big Judah coming to you guys from California. Before I begin, give all praises to the Most High Yahweh. Acknowledgement to the earthly mother, who is wisdom, who is the Holy Spirit. Acknowledgement to Yahweh Shai. I pray that the Most High blesses this lesson this evening, gives more knowledge and understanding of the events of the past, in order to understand the events that are currently happening on the earth, so you get a much better understanding of the things that are soon to come on the earth. As you see this coronavirus morphing into a pandemic, the vast majority of the world is lost. And what you're seeing right now is the fact that many of them are now like, well, where is America in prophecy? Why doesn't America, exist anywhere in prophecy? And that's what pretty much we're going to be talking about, is why they're under their guise and the way they think of things. America never really existed. They don't understand that. The America that they built never existed. The America that has been set up was just a very temporary existence for the other nations to receive their blessings. And I was listening to a guy who was talking about how why is it that America isn't here, and why isn't it, where did it go? And I was listening to another guy who's actually reading some pretty good stuff, and it was I'll probably have to do a video on it, Most High willing.
Refer to ourselves.
We're pretty much talking about how America was going to be destroyed, and how all these last day prophecies, America has nothing to do with a lot of these things that are going on. And that's true, because you Gentiles have refused to believe the truth. You have refused to tell your citizens the truth, that this whole concept of America that you guys built here on these lands is not anything real, nothing lasting, and that the Most High is going to take it down and sweep the people and the people who are part of that system off of the land, just like he has done to us. What you're seeing with the coronavirus, people are saying like, this has never been seen before. Yes, it has. It's never been seen before because the vast majority of the world has ignored the Aborigines of these lands. When you've hidden what happened to us, you pretty much have now laid a foundation of lies so that the entire world now, as the end comes for them, they won't understand what is happening. Just like the days of Noah. The days of Noah said that these people were going to be, buying, selling, marrying, doing everything like normal, because the history of the Aborigines of this land and how they were taken off of this land was hidden. Everyone thinks that all these prophecies are things that were going to happen way in the future or after they got raptured away. These things have all happened already, people. They've already happened to us. And now they're about to happen to you. And the fact is, you don't want to believe it. You want to continue living in La La Land thinking that, white Jesus is going to save you. White Jesus already gave you everything. And even to this day, you still believe white Jesus is going to save you. I'm cracking up with a lot of these guys getting all this information, talking about what's going on with the coronavirus and everything else, and then they have their white Jesus love fest at the end, and how he's going to save them from everything. But you're going to see right now, what happened to us is exactly what you're seeing right now.
Because if you know the history of the whole concept of whiteness, if you know the history of the whole concept of the white race, where it came from and for what reason, you know that it was a trick, and it's worked brilliantly. See, prior to the mid to late 1600s in the colonies of what would become the United States, there was no such thing as the white race. Those of us of European descent did not refer to ourselves by that term really ever before then. In fact, in the old countries of Europe, we had spent most of our time killing each other. We didn't love each other. We weren't one big happy family. The side of my family that comes from Scotland, hell, they didn't even worry about fighting people outside of Scotland. Highlanders and Lowlanders just fought the hell out of each other. So there was no white race, but in the colonies of what would become the United States, what did we see in the 1660s, 1670s? We began to see that Africans of indentured servant status Many of them not enslaved yet. They were not necessarily permanently enslaved. Some were, others were indentured, like many poor Europeans, for periods of 7 to 11 years. They could work off their indenture and then they would be free labor technically.
Colonial America had 3 social groups or classes. Most people belonged to the middle class. They owned farms or businesses. The small upper class or gentry included wealthy farmers, government officials, and lawyers. At the bottom were indentured servants and enslaved Africans. Indentured servants received passage to America on a ship. In return, they agreed to work for a specific period of time for the person who paid for their passage.
Realized, as did the white indentured servants, the Europeans who hadn't even been called white yet, that they had a lot of things in common, like the fact that they were all getting their clock cleaned by the elites. And so they would get together, more than our history books taught us, to foment rebellion against the elite, to try to get a better deal for themselves on the basis of economic necessity and economic justice.
And much of the formation of how we think about race came out of the New World, that is, when people came to the Americas from Europe. And there were people from Africa, and there were people from Europe, and there were the elites. And of course there were the people who were already here, the native people. And the elites tried to organize the people from Africa, the workers from Europe, indentured servers, and the native people to actually control them, to extract resources from them. And at some point, the people from Africa and the people from Europe decided to make common cause. They lived together, they worked together, they intermarried, they had children. It wasn't perfect, but there probably was much more what we would call interracial contact then than there is now. And it didn't seem odd at all. And at some point, it occurred to them that, look, we're doing all the work. We have no control over our lives. So there's this rebellion called the Bacon Rebellion, where they rebelled against the elite. And they demanded land, and they demanded greater democracy. They demanded a right to participate in the governance of the colony. And the elites rejected that. And there's this rebellion, and the rebellion was quite successful, called the Bacon Rebellion.
And what did the elite do? When you see that you're outnumbered by black and white folks who are penniless, landless, peasants, you have to do one of two things. You either have to kill them all, but you can't do that because who's going to work? Rich folks weren't going to. They had to get poor people to work. The whole point was to be a person of leisure back in those days. That was the goal, was not to work. So you couldn't kill them all. You didn't want to kill them all. You had to do the work yourself. You had to build your own levee, build your own house. No. Pick your own tobacco, harvest your own cotton. No, we're not going to do any of that.
The elites responded by saying, look, we have too many workers, and if they work together in a common cause, it's going to be hard to manage them. So they tried to experiment with separating the Africans and Europeans. And it took them almost 100 years. They tried religion, they tried language, they tried place of origin, and they stumbled upon race. Now they couldn't start with race because race didn't exist. So they couldn't just think of it. They had to experiment. And they start passing new laws like anti-miscegenation laws. And they told the now newly minted whites that your role is to identify with the elites. You're not an elite yourself, but you should identify with the elites, and you should police the non-whites. And they create slave patrols. But also they created a new identity. 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 White identity. It had not existed before. And the white identity was that middle stratum. That stratum of identifying with the elites and controlling the non-whites. And it's important in terms of saying this that the elites didn't think of themselves as white. Yes, they were Europeans. What they thought of themselves were the elites.
Talking about like Jews, right? Like we're really proudly Jewish family. Anti-Semitism is kind of the linchpin of white supremacy because the Jew appears to be white, but in fact, he's not white. I mean, this is all based on this lie that race is not a construct, right? It's which it is.
And because there had been this history where whites were so close to what was then blacks, there's always a fear that you might fall back into that space. So there's always this anxiety. There's always a fear that you might fall back into that space. So there's always this anxiety.
Moses said the Jews are priests to nations, and it's easier to be a priest to nations when there's multiple nations to intermediary between, and that could come in any factor. But generally, like as a believing Jew, we believe we have some role as a priest to nation, and that historically might have came out in intermediary as commerce, as middlemen of business, banking, real estate. But the essential function of being an intermediary between nations is obviously easier to fill among many nations, and also just the safety factor that when it's just one larger host population, it's easy for them to, God forbid, turn against us. But if there's a whole bunch of different populations together, they have to find unity amongst each other to be able to turn against us. So, I mean, to me, that just seemed pretty straight logic. Vince, I was surprised that Vince was surprised.
An early definition of whites were defined in terms of not being black. It was a negative definition. Interesting, the Bacon Rebellion, Bacon himself was white, but it became known as a rebellion driven by blacks because they were trying to create a sense of blackness being scary and somehow a threat to whiteness. What's important in terms of this history is that whiteness itself never was the top dog. There was always the elites. So when we look at understanding race today and the economy, we sometimes think in terms of whites and non-whites, or whites and blacks, Latinos, others. And it has some currency, that's real. But missing from that formulation are the role of the elites. And the colonies, Virginia being the most important, was a corporation.
So you can't kill them, but you can co-opt them. And so the elite in Virginia, for example, in the colony, begins to give certain carrots to people of European descent, saying things like, we're going to let you own a little land, not much, but just a little. And we're going to get rid of indentured servitude. Now you're free labor. And by the way, once you're free labor, you get 50 acres of land.
Once that period was finished, they received land, tools, and other supplies to help them start their own farms.
Just because you're free labor, see? So we're going to cut you in on this deal. We're going to let you enter into contracts. We're going to let you testify in court. And here's the best of all, we're going to put you on the slave patrol.
Colonists were able to govern themselves. In 1619, the leaders of Virginia gave free white males the right to vote for representatives they called burgesses. This was the first representative assembly in the colonies.
To keep those people in line, right? The idea was, you're still going to get your clock clean. We still don't like you. We still aren't going to really empower you or change your economic subordination, but we're going to make you honorary members of this team, and you're going to help us keep those other people down. So they got a little taste of power, and it did effectively divide and conquer those coalitions. Those rebellions began to stop almost instantly. Fast forward to the Civil War era, you have rich white folks in the South, where I come from, standing up and openly admitting that the reason they're prepared to secede from the Union, and the only reason they ever articulated publicly, ever, was to maintain and extend slavery and white supremacy not only where it already existed, but into the newly acquired, that is to say, stolen territories from Mexico to the West. That was what they said. Now we lie about it. We say it wasn't about slavery, that it was about states' rights. Yes, the right of the states to keep and maintain slaves, exactly. But back then they had no shame, so they didn't try and cover it up. They openly said it, but once again, the rich didn't want to go do the work. Are you kidding?
רגע, מה שאני לא מבין, זה כל הגויים הם איך קוראים?
תקשיב שנייה, אדוני.
בהמות.
אני יכול להגיד לך משהו?
אם אין להם ציווי.
אדם, שנייה, אדם זה על שם הדמה לעליון. אדם זה כי הוא יכול לדמה לאלוקים. אוקיי? זה פירוש אדם. אנחנו הפכנו את זה, זאת אומרת, העם הפך את זה. והאדם, בן אדם, כמו אתה בן אדם, אתה צריך להתנהג כמו בן אדם. אבל בעיקרון זה על שם עליון. אדם זה הדמה לעליון, וכיוון שאנחנו בנים של אלוקים, אז הוא קרא לנו בני אדם. עכשיו, הגויים מה שאין, כן? אלוקים עשה אותם בשביל שיעשו פה...
בשביל לשרת את היהודים.
כל הגויים שאתה רואה שיש בעולם, המיליארדים האלה, הם הכל רק בשביל שהיהודים יהיה להם איזה תועלת.
עכשיו,
אנחנו לא רואים את זה, אנחנו לא יודעים בדיוק.
שנייה, כן, היות ואנחנו בגלות, אז אוטומטי עדיין הם עוד לא משרתים אותנו לגמרי, רק חלקית.
כל אחד יהיה לו, כשמשיח יבוא, אז כל אחד יהיה לו אלפים עבדים, 2,800 עבדים.
בינתיים, המשיח לא כאן, אז איך הם משרתים אותנו?
הם בונים לנו רכבים,
בסדר, לא יודעים.
דירות, בניינים, למי הם בונים את זה? לנו, משרתים את היהודים.
אבל יש גם יהודים שעושים את זה.
בקושי.
בסדר, בוא תשמע. לא.
The slave trade is way worse than the Holocaust. How do you say it's way worse? The idea wasn't to exterminate them, the idea was to make them work.
My question to you is, have you heard it?
Yeah.
You've heard that?
That one,
that
not
are like dogs? Really?
I've never heard in context like that.
That non-Jews are like dogs?
In the Talmud, I don't know. Maybe it is. I don't know.
But you've heard that? I've never heard
people say it. Yeah.
Really? Oh, that's not nice. Okay.
Yeah, because there's extremists.
Okay.
להכניס את כל הגויים לתאי הגזים
לא, אל תבין.
אם הם לא מאמינים, זה לא הולך ככה, צריכים להאמין. בן אדם לא מאמין על שום דבר.
מה, אני לא מאמין, צריך להכניס אותי בתאי גז.
ראשון צריך להאמין. להאמין שמשהו, מה?
Oh, they're going to get poor people to go fight for them. And the poor folks didn't even own slaves. Now think, how do you get poor people who don't even own the shirt on their back, let alone slaves, to go fight to keep your slaves for you? You've got to convince them that their skin is more important than their economic interest, because think about it. If I am a farmer who has to charge you $1 a day or $2 a week to work on your farm and harvest that tobacco or pick that cotton, but you can get a black person to do it for free because you own them, who's going to get the job? Not me. In other words, slavery actually undermined the wages and the wage base, the economic floor of the typical white working class or low-income person. But they were told, if these people are freed, they're going to take your job. No, fool, they got your job. That's the point. And so at some level, again, working class white people being harmed by white privilege, relatively being advantaged, right? Being given a leg up, being given a membership to the club, but in absolute terms being kept economically subordinated by the very thing that gave them a sense of superiority. How's that for irony? Then in the present era, this hasn't stopped, this is not ancient history. Now we have people running around insisting that we should close the border with Mexico because if we don't, the wages of working class people will continue to fall. The implication being that the only reason workers are paid like crap in this country is because the border is open.
Right, I'm making this video because I'm pissed off at people who say immigrants are stealing their jobs.
We just want the nation in peace. That's what we need right now.
EU referendum.
Yeah.
Now talk. At the end of the day, right, I think that is a brilliant idea that we left the EU. Because there were so many foreigners coming over and taking our jobs.
They took our jobs! They took your jobs! They took your jobs!
I know it's not just all them foreigners, because I know some of the foreigners are doctors, and some of them foreigners can save our lives. There are some foreigners that are coming over and taking our jobs, yeah, and not even working.
And I'll try and explain why I think they are wrong. Basically, there are not a set amount of jobs in an economy, right? If everybody left Britain, if every single person left Britain, do you still think there'd be the same amount of jobs in Britain that there are now? Of course not. There would be 0 jobs because nobody would be working. By the same logic, if more and more people come into a country, that means there are more jobs available, the economy grows bigger and stronger. Let me explain why. Imagine you're an immigrant who comes into the country, right? You get yourself a job, right? You're not just taking the money from that job and sending it in ISIS or Bongoland or wherever you think these people are coming from. You're spending it in Britain. You're buying clothes, you're buying food, you're buying other products. That means there's now a larger demand within our economy for these products. So those businesses that are selling the clothes, selling the food, etc., they now have a larger consumer base to sell products to. Therefore, they start receiving a larger income. That means those businesses are growing and the economy overall is growing. That means they now have more money to spend on wages so they can hire new workers. If more people come into a country, businesses do better because there's more customers for those businesses, not less.
doesn't mean there's less money and less jobs, okay? Basic. Other thing, by the way, immigrants are 43% less likely to claim benefits than British natives.
And they're not even working. They say that they're signing on for a job and they do that job, but they're not even doing the job. They just send their money over to the people, over to their families in a different country. And I don't think that's fair, because they're getting something for nothing and their families are getting something for nothing.
May I ask how old you are?
I'm 17, but I know I'm 17 and I think I speak sense.
They took our jobs! They took our jobs! They took our jobs!
So all of this you're saying about how they're stealing your jobs, they're stealing your public services, that's another thing. If an immigrant comes into your country and gets a job, he's paying taxes. That means that he's contributing money to the government to spend on welfare, to spend on education, and to spend on the health service.
They took our jobs! They took our jobs!
So if you're there thinking, wait, our country's in a mess, we've got no money for education, NHS, whatever, it's not because of sneaky immigrants taking your money, it's because of your government which won't spend enough on it. Try asking them about the 120 billion in tax avoidance that they're not taking from rich bankers who are their friends. That is the problem, not immigrants. Not the disabled people, and not the little people you see on Jeremy Carl's show, benefit scram. Because at the same time as you think that even these arguments don't affect you or don't affect anything, actually they affect people you might not realize it does. Anyway, yeah.
Knows the first two laws that Hitler implemented. Hitler, Yimach Shemo v'Zichro, first two laws that Hitler implemented that not only put him in a different status than everybody else for the rest of history, but also made what's called until this day the biggest financial miracle in history. Who knows the first two laws? Before the Nuremberg laws. Before that, we're talking about years before it. Hitler first comes into power. What's the first two laws? Okay, I'll save you the time. Rule number 1, no more pornography. No more homosexuality, none of that garbage. Not allowed. Berlin, in the 30s, in the 20s, was the Sodom and Gomorrah of the day. They were the Las Vegas of the day. They were the Sodom and Gomorrah of the day. Homosexuality, pornography, all the bestiality, all the garbage of the world, that was the capital of the world. He outlawed it. You're no longer allowed, closed all the bars, all the gay clubs, all the production, which were all run by Jewish people, unfortunately. Second rule. What's the second rule? Second rule was, you're not allowed to charge interest. No more interest. Now you would think, why? What does he care about interest? Well, because all the people that had the money, that lent the money out, were Jews. He didn't like it. He said no more interest. Why? Because of the high interest that the Jews charged people was so high, it ruined, it destroyed the economy in Germany.
How's that for irony? Then, in the present era, this hasn't stopped. This is not ancient history. Now we have people running around insisting that we should close the border with Mexico because if we don't, the wages of working class people will continue to fall. The implication being that the only reason workers are paid like crap in this country is because the border is open. But if you believe that, you would actually have to believe that if that border were closed, that all these owners of capital and industry would just say, oh, well, you figured us out. Here, it's a raise. Do we really believe that the only thing keeping bosses from paying people more is the presence of low-wage, medium, semi-skilled labor from south of this artificial border? Is that really what we believe? We know that if that border is closed, it isn't going to be closed to capital. It isn't going to be closed to goods. If you have a border that can be crossed by capital looking for the highest return on investment or goods looking for the highest price, but labor is chained to its country of origin, how is that going to work to the benefit of working people? By definition, it doesn't. By definition, it immiserates the working class. Divide and conquer. But the best example of all, perhaps, in the contemporary era, in the greater New Orleans area after Katrina. Here you have two communities that were the most hard hit. Lower Ninth Ward mostly black community, 94% African American, about 40% official poverty rate, heavy working class community. And right across the canal, St. Bernard Parish, Chalmette, 95% white, also working class, high levels of poverty, economically very similar. And at the end of the day, in those first few days of September 2005, more similar than they probably would have realized. Because when those levees broke, they all got their stuff jacked. They all got their stuff destroyed. But if you had asked white folks in Chalmette, and I've done it, who was the cause of the problems in the greater New Orleans area prior to that flooding, they would have pointed across that canal at those black folks, wouldn't have called them black folks, and would have said, there, that's the problem. 70% of the white folks in St. Bernard Parish voted for David Duke, white supremacist, neo-Nazi, former head of the largest Ku Klux Klan group in the United States when he ran for governor in 1991. 7 out of 10 gladly voted for him because he was blaming black folks for all of their problems, and they bought it. What's the irony? The irony is that while they were blaming black people for their problems, while they were blaming black people for the conditions of the greater New Orleans area in which they lived, nobody was paying attention, least of all they, to the fact that these white elite politicians, either in Baton Rouge or in Washington, whose job it was to secure those levees, to make sure that levee funds were spent in the proper way and that they were spent at all.
With the breach of 3 levees protecting New Orleans, the landscape of the city has changed dramatically, tragically, and perhaps irreversibly. There's now over 25 feet of water where there was once city streets and thriving neighborhoods.
I hate the way they portray us in the media. If you see a black family, it says they're looting. See a white family, it says they're looking for food. And you know it's been 5 days because most of the people are black. And even for me to complain about, I would be a hypocrite because I've tried to turn away from the TV because it's too hard to watch. I've even been shopping before even giving a donation. So now I'm calling my business manager right now to see what is the biggest amount I can give, and just to imagine if I was down there, and those are my people down there. So anybody out there that wants to do anything that we can help with the setup, the way America is set up to help the poor, the black people, the less well off as slow as possible. I mean, Red Cross is doing everything they can. We already realize a lot of the people that could help are at war right now, fighting another way, and they've given them permission to go down and shoot us.
And subtle, but in even many ways more profoundly devastating, is the lasting damage to the survivors' will to rebuild and remain in the area. The destruction of the spirit of the people of southern Louisiana and Mississippi may end up being the most tragic loss of all.
George Bush doesn't care about black people.
Please call.
In the past few days, America and people have been stepping up to donate money, to do all they can to help people in New Orleans and all over.
Those mostly white, and mostly elite politicians did nothing. At the end of the day, it wasn't just the black folks in the lower Ninth Ward they didn't care about. They really couldn't have given a rat's ass about those poor and working class white folks either.
Talking about, like, Jews, right? Like, we're really proudly Jewish family. Anti-Semitism is kind of the linchpin of white supremacy because the Jew appears to be white, but in fact, he's not white.
And yet, when the people of Chalmette, people of St. Bernard Parish got back into session, first time they had a city council meeting, parish council meeting after the flooding, the lights aren't even on yet. The water isn't even hooked up. And the first order of business was to pass an ordinance saying that you couldn't rent property in St. Bernard Parish to anyone who wasn't a blood relative. Now, I'll leave it to your imagination as to why you'd want to pass a law. That law had never existed before. But now that it's been emptied out and you don't know who might come back, that's a damn good way to keep black people out, isn't it? Because if you're 95% white to begin with, if you pass an ordinance that says that, that's a great, you can't say no blacks need apply, you can't say no blacks allowed, but that was an ingenious way to get around the law. Now, they got caught, There was a lawsuit threatening they got rid of the ordinance. But my point in bringing it up is to say, once again, divide and conquer is working. These white folks in Chalmette need to march across that canal and join hands with the black folks who've been sitting there more than willing to work with them for an awful long time, and march on Baton Rouge and march on DC and march on the Corps of Engineers and recognize their commonality of interest. But the whiteness and the lure of whiteness has tricked these have nothing in their bank account white people into believing that they got more in common with the rich white folks on St. Charles Avenue that didn't lose anything in that flooding than they have in common with the black working class folks who live about 500 yards away.
So Virginia was literally owned by a corporation and governed by a corporation for the crown to extract as much resources as possible from people, from land. And to some extent, that formulation we still live with today, even though it's been updated.
Leaped across the Atlantic into Mexico and other Latin American countries. So that's what was happening around Cristobal Colon. So why did he sail the ocean blue in 1492? Because who is in La Niña, La Pinta, and La Santa Maria? His fleet of ships that where he journeyed back and forth, bringing passengers. Who are the passengers? We'll get the passengers list and find out. They're Martinez's and Durans and Montalvos and Sanchez, and Bacas, and you name it. All of these names, well, might they be Sephardic? Well, if Christopher Columbus, Colon, is Sephardic, and Columbus kept sending letters to his son Don Diego, all right, who was left behind, and in his memoirs, in his letters, he puts little Hebrew sayings such as Be'erat Hashem, with the help of God. And so, all that is to say, who is he hauling? He's hauling a lot of passengers that are Sephardic Jews.
Well, you know, Del, the history books say that it was the crown's jewels that paid for his trips and financed the ships. Is that true?
No. The fact is, that's I think you've read my notes. They say that Queen Isabella sold her jewelry, all right, to finance Columbus's voyages. She sold her Jews, her subjects, not her jewels, because the ones that really financed Colon's voyages across the Atlantic were four Sephardic wealthy fellows: Abravanel, Señor, Santangel, and here again we have Sanchez. All right, so not that I'm related, but it was Jews that financed his journeys.
close camera action. Before you go anywhere, don't forget to click subscribe.
War, and for me, the intertwining of those lives, the watcher and the watched, is the kind of glue of the storytelling, and for the audience to experience the surveillance thriller in a way via the FBI story, but to see the mechanics of surveillance and see that turned against Gene.
Like Gene Seberg, Kristen Stewart has experienced life as a young star under constant media attention. Did you feel a connection in that sense of the kind of scrutiny?
I've been saying, like, on a very comparatively superficial level, yes, definitely.
Yeah.
You know, I've never been so viciously attacked in the way that she was. Everyone's impression of you is not necessarily going to be the same, and there's not a correct one. Maybe you can pick up, like, a certain magazine that you know lies to you, but people kind of typically know that those things are people take them with a grain of salt, whatever. Maybe some people don't. Who cares? I don't really care. But to have lies spread about you is so vicious.
Seberg, the film, is now showing around the country. For the PBS NewsHour, I'm Jeffrey Brown.
On the NewsHour online right now, special correspondent Marcia Biggs has been reporting for the NewsHour on the humanitarian crisis in Venezuela, where many international aid organizations have been blocked from offering aid. She's now sharing some ways you can help local organizations who are trying to make a difference there. See how you can pitch in on our website. That's pbs.org/newshour. And that is the NewsHour for tonight. Please don't forget to join us tomorrow when Judy Woodruff sits down with Michael Bloomberg. I'm Amna Nawaz. Join us online and again here tomorrow evening. For all of us at the PBS NewsHour, thank you, and we'll see you soon.
Major funding for the PBS NewsHour has been provided by...
Before we talk about your investments, what's new?
Audrey's expecting.
Twins. We'd be closer to the twins.
Change in plans.
At Fidelity, a change in plans is always part of the plan.
When it comes to wireless, Consumer Cellular gives its customers the choice. Our no-contract plans give you as much or as little talk, text, and data as you want. And our U.S.-based customer service team is on hand to help. To learn more, go to consumercellular.tv.
Colette. American Cruise Lines. BNSF Railway. The Ford Foundation, working with visionaries on the front lines of social change worldwide. And with the ongoing support of these individuals and institutions. This program was made possible by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting and by contributions to your PBS station from viewers like you. Thank you. This is PBS NewsHour West. From WETA Studios in Washington and from our bureau at the Walter Cronkite School of Journalism at Arizona State University.
You're watching PBS.
So Dr. Nancy Messonnier, she has a famous brother. Who is her brother?
Former Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein.
Rod Rosenstein is Dr. Nancy Messonnier's brother.
Yes, they excelled quite a lot together in raising into the highest levels of D.C. politics, also government infrastructure.
That's an interesting tidbit of information.
You support
Another passenger,
Kevin
an Israeli
Paulson's very
woman,
public
on a
position
flight from
to
Milan,
defend
Italy to Israel, caused some concern today on a flight because she was sick. And the other passengers noticed that she was sick, and it disturbed the passengers. They told the flight crew about it. And anyhow, the woman, a medical team examined the woman when she arrived in Israel. We don't have any more information about her condition. But what we're seeing now is passengers are becoming concerned if they just see somebody become sick on the plane.
Well, it's much like after 9/11, you saw someone Arabic, or someone with, a form of a beard or any out of the characteristic of Islam. You would freak out. And this was happening in America. There was a lot of Islamophobia that was spreading. Now we have anyone who looks sick. You're immediately having some kind of panic. And again, this is odd because this is a scenario we briefed about 2 weeks ago based on information.
But the previous story, Edward, was the LAX story. 30 members of that flight of Christians that went to Israel, they've been diagnosed with the virus. And the flight attendant has been diagnosed. So you have to consider that people on the plane that you're riding on has the virus. So, look, I know what it's going to do to air travel. It's going to kill it. Look, I'm not going anywhere. I'm locked down myself. I've done my own self-quarantine for this year because I heard the Holy Spirit speak to me on the flight from Zurich, Switzerland, coming back from Davos. And I know when I hear the Holy Spirit's voice, and he told me, cancel your travel this year. You're not going to be traveling. And now I see why. I see how fast this thing has spread. Hey, we had an incident here in the Americas, south of us for Florida, Cayman Islands. An Italian cruise ship, the Meraviglia, was denied permission to dock in the harbor of two countries, Jamaica and the Cayman Islands, because a crew member on the ship was sick with fever and other symptoms. The ship tried to dock in the harbor of Jamaica. They turned them down. They then sailed to the Cayman Islands. The Prime Minister of Cayman Islands also said, no, you can't come in here. Both countries made a wise call. Look at the situation in Japan.
Right, with the Diamond Princess.
I mean, you have 600 people trapped.
Floating city of individuals.
3,000 people trapped. At least 600 of them have the virus. We don't know now how many of them today have the virus because they basically have stopped talking about it. So Cayman Islands said, no, the cruise ship cannot come into our harbor. The Jamaica newspaper, The Gleaner, first reported that the ship was ordered to remain at sea after it discovered that a crew member had traveled to the Philippines in the past 2 weeks. The crew member is presently kept in isolation on the ship, reported to have flu-like symptoms, according to the port director, Joseph Woods. The reports said that the Cayman Islands Public Health Department and Ministry of Health said that also a member of the ship's crew had been placed in isolation, suffering from a cough, fever, muscle pains. But it also reports that another member of the ship's crew is also not well. It doesn't go into details of possibly 2 people on that ship in the crew are sick.
What really stuck out to me here, Rick, is that we're not talking about a cruise in Asia. We're talking about a cruise in our hemisphere. Okay, but
it's an Italian ship.
Sure, it's an Italian ship.
a lot of the passengers are Italians. And so they've come here. When they left Italy, they weren't sick. They had the virus, but somebody, well, I'm saying not every, I'm saying somebody on that ship.
And all it takes is one.
And it takes is one. It could be just that crew member. Somebody on that ship when they left Italy, somebody had the virus. All right? And so probably most likely a lot of the people on that ship are Italians. It is an Italian vessel. And but look, once again, the cruise industry, you're going to see bankruptcies this year. How in the world are they going to survive? I mean, to go get on a cruise ship right now is one of the most...
it's not a great decision.
It's not a smart decision right now, especially take your family and subject them to that kind of risk.
Rick, I wonder if governments are looking at this, and let's say they're already looking at the trend analysis that the cruise industry is not going to be able to sell seats, not be able to sell tickets for cruises. I wonder if governments are going to start to look at these cruise ships that are sitting in harbor as
hospitals.
As hospitals.
Quarantine.
Yes, maybe the government will end up marshaling, taking these under various emergency laws, or again renting them.
Yes.
But they'll be used not for tourism, but for treatment.
Quarantine centers. You take the sick, you put them on a ship, and you take the ship, put the ship way from the coast, and you got all the sick people out there dying on a ship.
Like a leper colony on the ocean.
Very real possibility. Next one, this is number 17. This is from a radio station in Nassau County, New York, 10:10 a.m. 83 people in Nassau County, New York being monitored for possible coronavirus exposure.
We just actually got word that President Trump is live from the podium, so we're ready to go to it.
Okay,
yes.
We're going to go to the White House. Hopefully the ADL has not called the White House yet and prevented us from going to this news conference. Here's President Trump.
Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you very much. Before I begin, I'd like to extend my deepest condolences to the victims and families in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Earlier today, a wicked murderer opened fire at a Molson Coors Brewing Company plant, taking the lives of 5 people. A number of people were wounded, some badly wounded. Our hearts break for them and their loved ones. We send our condolences. We'll be with them. And it's a terrible thing, terrible thing. So our hearts go out to the people of Wisconsin and to the families. Thank you very much. I've just received another briefing from a great group of talented people on the virus that is going around to various parts of the world. We have, through some very good early decisions that were actually ridiculed at the beginning, we closed up our borders to flights coming in from certain areas, areas that were hit by the coronavirus and hit pretty hard. And we did it very early. A lot of people thought we shouldn't have done it that early, and we did, and it turned out to be a very good thing. And the number one priority from our standpoint is the health and safety of the American people, and that's the way I viewed it when I made that decision. Because of all we've done, the risk to the American people remains very low. And we have the greatest experts in the world, really in the world, right here. The people that are called upon by other countries when things like this happen. We're ready to adapt, and we're ready to do whatever we have to as the disease spreads, if it spreads. As most of you know, the level that we've had in our country is very low, and those people are getting better, or we think that in almost all cases, the better are getting. We have a total of 15. We took in some from Japan. You heard about that, because they're American citizens and they're in quarantine. And they're getting better too, but we felt we had an obligation to do that. It could have been as many as 42 and we found that it was just an obligation we felt that we had. We could have left them, and that would have been very bad, I think, American people. And they're recovering. Of the 15 people, the original 15, as I call them, 8 of them have returned to their homes, to stay in their homes until fully recovered. 1 is in the hospital, and 5 have fully recovered. And 1 is, we think, in pretty good shape, and it's in between hospital and going home. So we have a total of, 15 people, and they're in a process of recovering, with some already having fully recovered. We started out by looking at certain things. We've been working with the Hill very, very carefully, very strongly, and I think we have very good bipartisan spirit for money. We were asking for $2.5 billion, and we think that's a lot, but the Democrats and I guess Senator Schumer wants us to have much more than that. And normally in life I'd say, we'll take it. We'll take it. If they want to give more, we'll do more. We're going to spend whatever's appropriate. Hopefully we're not going to have to spend so much, because we really think we've done a great job in keeping it down to a minimum. And again, we've had tremendous success beyond what people would have thought. Now, at the same time, you do have some outbreaks in some countries. Italy and various countries are having some difficulty. China, you know about where it started. I spoke with President Xi. We had a great talk. He's working very hard, I have to say. He's working very, very hard. And if you can count on the reports coming out of China, that spread has gone down quite a bit. The infection seems to have calmed down over the last 2 days. As opposed to getting larger, it's actually gotten smaller. In one instance where we think it's somewhat reliable, it seems to have gotten quite a bit smaller. With respect to the money that's being negotiated, they can do whatever they want. I mean, we'll do the 2.5. We're requesting 2.5. Some Republicans would like us to get 4, and some Democrats would like us to get 8.5, and we'll be satisfied whatever it is. We're bringing in a specialist, very highly regarded specialist, tomorrow, who works actually at the State Department, very, very tremendously talented in doing this. I want you to understand something that shocked me when I saw it, that I spoke with Dr. Fauci on this, and I was really amazed, and I think most people are amazed to hear it. The flu in our country kills from 25,000 people to 69,000 people a year. That was shocking to me. And so far, if you look at what we have with the 15 people, and they're recovering, one is pretty sick, but hopefully will recover. But the others are in great shape. But think of that, 25,000 to 69,000. Over the last 10 years, we've lost 360,000. These are people that have died from the flu, from what we call the flu. Hey, did you get your flu shot? And that's something. Now, what we've done is we've stopped non-U.S. citizens from coming into America from China. That was done very early on. We're screening people, and we have been at a very high level, screening people coming into the country from infected areas. We have in quarantine those infected and those at risk. We have a lot of great quarantine facilities. We're rapidly developing a vaccine, and they can speak to you. The professionals can speak to you about that. The vaccine is coming along well, and in speaking to the doctors, we think this is something that we can develop fairly rapidly, a vaccine for the future, and coordinate with the support of our partners. We have great relationships with all of the countries that we're talking about. Some it's a fairly large number of countries. Some it's one person, and many countries have no problem whatsoever. And we'll see what happens. But we're very, very ready for this, for anything, whether it's going to be a breakout of larger proportions or whether or not we're we're at that very low level, and we want to keep it that way. So we're at the low level. As they get better, we take them off the list, so that we're going to be pretty soon at only 5 people, and we could be at just 1 or 2 people over the next short period of time. So we've had very good luck. The Johns Hopkins, I guess it is a highly respected, great place. They did a study, comprehensive, the country's best and worst prepared for an epidemic. And the United States is now, we're rated number 1. We're rated number 1 for being prepared. This is a list of different countries. I don't want to get in your way, especially since you do such a good job. This is a list of the different countries. United States is rated number 1, most prepared. United Kingdom, Netherlands, Australia, Canada, Thailand, Sweden, Denmark, South Korea, Finland. This is a list of the best rated countries in the world by Johns Hopkins. We're doing something else that's important to me, because he's been terrific in many ways, but he's also very good on health care. And we really followed him very closely. A lot of states do. When Mike was governor, Mike Pence of Indiana, they've established great health care. They have a great system there, a system that a lot of the other states have really looked to and changed their systems. They wanted to base it on the Indiana system. He's very good. And I think, and he's really very expert at the field. And what I've done is I'm going to be announcing exactly right now that I'm going to be putting our Vice President, Mike Pence, in charge. And Mike will be working with the professionals, doctors, and everybody else that's working. The team is brilliant. I spent a lot of time with the team over the last couple of weeks, but they're totally brilliant, and we're doing really well. And Mike is going to be in charge, and Mike will report back to me. But he's got a certain talent for this, and I'm going to ask Mike Pence to say a few words, please. Thank you, Mike.
Thank you, Mr. President. President Trump's made clear from the first days of this administration we have no higher priority than the safety, security, health, and well-being of the American people. And from the first word of an outbreak of the coronavirus, the President took unprecedented steps to protect the American people from the spread of this disease. He recounted those briefly, but the establishment of travel restrictions, aggressive quarantine effort of Americans that are returning, the declaration of a public health emergency, and establishing the White House Corona Task Force are all reflective of the urgency that the President has brought to a whole-of-government approach. As a former governor from the state where the first MERS case emerged in 2014, I know full well the importance of presidential leadership, the importance of administration leadership, and the vital role of partnerships of state and local governments and health authorities in responding to the potential threat of dangerous infectious diseases. And I look forward, Mr. President, to serving in this role, bringing together all the members of the Corona Task Force that you've established, HHS, CDC, DHS, the Department of Transportation, and state. This team has been, at your direction, Mr. President, meeting every day since it was established. My role will be to continue to bring that team together, to bring to the President the best options for action to see to the safety and well-being and health of the American people. We'll also be continuing to reach out to governors, state and local officials. In fact, in the recent days, the White House met with over 40 state, county, and city health officials from over 30 states and territories to discuss how to respond to this, to the potential threat of the coronavirus. We'll be working with them in renewed ways to make sure they have the resources to be able to respond. And as the President said, we'll be adding additional personnel here at the White House to support our efforts on the President's behalf. We'll also be working with members of Congress to ensure that the resources are available for this whole of government response, and we'll be working very closely with Secretary Azar and his team that have done an outstanding job communicating to the public to ensure the American people have the best information on ways to protect themselves and their families, and also that the public has the most timely information on the potential threat to the American people. Mr. President, as we've been briefed, while the threat to the American public remains low of a spread of the coronavirus, you have directed this team to take all steps necessary to continue to ensure the health and well-being of the American people. And the people of this country can be confident that under your leadership, we will continue to bring the full resources of the federal government in coordination with our state and local partners to see to the health and well-being and to the effective response to the coronavirus here in the United States of America. With that, the President's asked me to recognize the Secretary of Health and Human Services, Alex Azar, and also the Deputy Director of CDC, Dr. Ann Shaka, for remarks. Secretary.
Well, thank you, Mr. Vice President, and thank you, Mr. President, for gathering your public health experts here today and for your strong leadership in keeping America safe. And I just want to say I could not be more delighted that you've asked the Vice President, my old friend and colleague, to lead this whole of government approach with us under the Emergency Support Function number 8. As of today, we have 15 cases of COVID-19 that have been detected in the United States, with only one new case detected in the last 2 weeks. We also have 3 cases among Americans repatriated from Wuhan and 42 cases among Americans repatriated who had been stuck on the Diamond Princess in Japan. The President's early and decisive actions, including travel restrictions, have succeeded in buying us incredibly valuable time. This has helped us contain the spread of the virus, handle the cases that we have, and prepare for the possibility that we will need to mitigate broader spread of infections within the United States. The President's actions, taken with the strong support of his scientific advisors, have proven to be appropriate, wise, and well calibrated to the situation. We're grateful for the hard work that healthcare workers, first responders, communities, and state and local leaders have put into the response so far. Because of this hard work and the President's leadership, the immediate risk to the American public has been and continues to be low. Our containment strategy has been working. At the same time, what every one of our experts and leaders have been saying for more than a month now remains true. The degree of risk has the potential to change quickly, and we can expect to see more cases in the United States. That is why we've been reminding the American public and our state, local, and private sector partners that they should be aware of what a broader response would look like. CDC has recommended that the American public, and especially state and local governments, businesses, and other organizations, should refresh themselves on how they would respond in the event that the situation worsens. We're encouraging Americans to learn what future steps might be necessary to keep themselves and their communities safe. Knowing these potential steps now can help keep the risk to you and your community low. Americans can find useful information at cdc.gov/COVID, COVID-19. And we're working closely with government and private sector partners to educate them about preparedness. Finally, we've begun working with Congress to secure the funding that we need. There are 5 major priorities in the White House request to Congress that the White House made on Monday. These priorities are: first, expanding our surveillance network; second, support for state and local governments work; third and fourth, development of therapeutics and vaccines; and fifth, manufacturing and purchase of personal protective equipment like gowns and masks. As chairman of the President's Coronavirus Task Force, I'm committed to providing regular updates from our coordinated interagency process. We've had our top public health leaders, like those joining me here today, speaking to the media many times per day to inform the American public. The Trump administration is going to continue to be aggressively transparent, keeping the American people and the media apprised of the situation and what everyone can do. With that, I'm going to hand things over to Dr. Ann Schuchat. Dr. Schuchat is the Senior Career Official at the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, the Principal Deputy Director, with an over 30-year career at the CDC in public health and as a member of the United States Public Health Service Commission Corps. So, Dr. Schuchat, I'll turn it over to you.
Thanks so much, Mr. Secretary. As you know, this has been a difficult and challenging time, and our hearts go out to the individuals who have been directly affected by the virus and to all those who have been working tirelessly in responding to it. Our aggressive containment strategy here in the United States has been working and is responsible for the low levels of cases that we have so far. However, we do expect more cases, and this is a good time to prepare. As you heard, it's the perfect time for businesses, healthcare systems, universities, and schools to look at their pandemic preparedness plans, dust them off, and make sure that they're ready. And we have lots more information at the CDC's website and in partnership on how to do that. But it's also a really good time for the American public to prepare and for you to know what this means for you. The coronavirus that we're talking about is a respiratory virus. It's spread in a similar way to the common cold or to influenza. It's spread through coughs and sneezes. And so those everyday sensible measures that we tell people to do every year with the flu are important here. Covering your cough, staying home when you're sick, and washing your hands. Tried and true, not very exciting measures, but really important ways that you can prevent the spread of respiratory viruses. So the trajectory of what we're looking at over the weeks and months ahead is very uncertain, but many of the steps that we have taken over the past 15 years to prepare for pandemic influenza and our experience going through the 2009 H1N1 pandemic of influenza remind us of the kinds of steps that our healthcare system, our businesses, our communities and schools may need to take. We're in this together, all of government, the public and the private sector, and the CDC wants to make sure you have the best information available every day. Thank you.
I just want to give you a very quick update on the. My name is Dr. Tony Fauci. I'm the director of the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases at NIH. Just a very quick update on the countermeasure development in the form of vaccines and therapeutics. I had told this audience at a recent press briefing that we have a number of vaccine candidates and one prototype one to give you a feel for the time frame of a vaccine and what its impact might be now and in subsequent years, is that I told you we would have a vaccine that we would be putting into trials to see if it's safe and if it induces a response that you would predict would be protective in about 3 months. I think it's going to be a little bit less than that. It's probably going to be closer to 2 months. That would then take about 3 months to determine if it's safe and immunogenic, which gives us 6 months. Then you graduate from a trial, which is phase 1 of 45 people, to a trial that involves hundreds, if not low thousands of people to determine efficacy. At the earliest, an efficacy trial would take an additional 6 to 8 months. So although this is the fastest we have ever gone from a sequence of a virus to a trial, it still would not be any applicable to the epidemic unless we really wait about a year to a year and a half. Now, that means 2 things. One, the answer to containing is public health measures. We can't rely on a vaccine over the next several months to a year. However, if this virus, which we have every reason to believe it is quite conceivable that it will happen, will go beyond just a season and come back and recycle next year. If that's the case, we hope to have a vaccine. And then finally and briefly, therapeutics. There are a number of antiviral drugs that are being tested. A few days ago, we initiated a randomized controlled trial of a drug called remdesivir, which has antiviral activity in vitro in an animal model. The good news about that is that it's a trial that's randomized to either placebo or standard of care and drug and standard of care, which means that we will know reasonably soon whether it works. And if it does, we will then have an effective therapy to distribute. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. President. First of all, you have just come from a long and busy trip from India. And
Great country.
As far as this coronavirus is concerned, you have a great scientific and medical team behind you and with you, and I'm sure they will keep America safe. As far as your trip to India, Mr. President, where do we go from here as far as U.S.-India relations are concerned? And also, Mr. President, you are very famous in India, and Prime Minister Modi is very famous in America. What is the future? And Indian American community is with you, Mr. President.
Yeah, we won't talk too much about that other than I just got back. Long flight. It's a long flight. He's a great gentleman, a great leader. It's an incredible country. We were treated very, very well, and we really enjoyed it. A lot of tremendous progress was made in terms of relationship. Our relationship with India is extraordinary right now, and we're going to be doing a lot of business with India. They're sending billions and billions of dollars now to the United States, but we'd rather talk about this right now.
The CDC said yesterday that they believe it's inevitable that the virus will spread in the United States, and it's not a question of if, but when. Do you agree with that assessment?
Well, I don't think it's inevitable. It probably will. It possibly will. It could be at a very small level, or it could be at a larger level. Whatever happens, we're totally prepared. We have the best people in the world. You see that from the study. We have the best prepared people, the best people in the world. Congress is willing to give us much more than we're even asking for. That's nice for a change. But we are totally ready, willing, and able. It's a term that we use. It's ready, willing, and able. We have. It's going to be very well under control. Now, it may get bigger, it may get a little bigger, may not get bigger at all. We'll see what happens. But regardless of what happens, we're totally prepared. Please.
Mr. President, you talked a little earlier about the screening measures that you put in place and the travel restrictions you put in place regarding China. At this point, as the virus spreads in Italy and South Korea, are you planning on adding those countries?
Well, just so you understand, I'm the president of the United States. I'm not the president of other countries. Other countries, some are on the list that are very respected in what they do in terms of what we're talking about. But I really want to be responsible for this country if it means placing a very strong situation on the border so people can't come into our country from a country that is infected. We're doing that, and we've already done it with numerous countries. But we have to focus on this country. I don't think it's right to impose ourselves on others. But if others aren't taking care, or we think they're doing it incorrectly, we're dealing with World Health, and we have terrific people. And CDC does go around and help other countries, give them recommendations as what to do. But they're working on their countries, and we're working on our countries. And so far, from our standpoint, it's really worked out very well.
Follow up on this question. Can you clarify, are you considering restricting travel to and from South Korea, Italy, and other countries that have been affected?
At a right time, we may do that. Right now, it's not the right time, but at a right time, and we are checking people as they come through, specifically for the problem that we're dealing with. So we're checking a lot of people. If they're coming from South Korea's been hit pretty hard. Italy's been hit pretty hard. China is obvious what's happened in China. But again, the numbers seem to be leveling off and going down in China, which is very good news. So we'll see what happens.
The White House has spent a day denying that they are going to appoint a czar to run point on the coronavirus response. Today, the Secretary Azar testified that he didn't think one was necessary. They were going to run it out of HHS. And you yourself have been downplaying this. So why are you now selecting the Vice President to run point on this?
Well, Mike is not Azari's Vice President. He's in the administration. But I'm having everybody report to Mike. Mike's been very good, very adept. Anybody that knows anything about healthcare, they look at the Indiana model, and it's been a very great success. It's been a tremendous model in terms of healthcare, and this is really an offshoot of that. So this isn't a czar. I don't view Mike as a czar. Mike is part of the administration, but I'm having them report to Mike. Mike will report to me.